Alrighty, let's talk about how you get hired. Let's talk about the decisions that hiring managers and recruiters make to get you in the door. The background work on you. Every single day, I wake up to emails and DMs that will read something like this. Jordana, I hate my job. I just started working with this company and I realized that it's not the right fit for me. I did everything that I possibly could in the interview process to understand the culture, the compensation, and leadership. And unfortunately, when I got in, I was surprised to find out that name whatever the reason is here, and now I hate it. I know there are times where you're deceived in the interview process. And when you get into the role and uncover truths that weren't there in the interview process. But I will tell you that this is less than 5% of the time. Oftentimes, I find candidates have not asked the right questions. They've not done the right homework on the company by reading and scouring through a variety of different online resources. The candidate has not bothered to reach out to someone who had worked at the company before, and the candidate has not bothered to do the background work on themselves to understand what it was that were absolute necessities of the job versus what was going to be nice to get into this job and the nice haves. There are signs that people are trying to tell you who they are at any given moment throughout the interview process. People are always showing you who they are. And oftentimes we ignore those signs because we really want this job. We desperately need the money. We're sick of being out of work. We hate the situation that we're in, or we really just haven't bothered to figure out what it is about us that when we get into these positions, we keep making the same mistakes. We'd like to blame other people because it's easier to do that. How you get hired is not about getting you the highest paying job. It's not about finding you the best culture to work in. And it's not about getting a better title. It's about finding you a fit for your lifestyle, for your skill set, for your competencies, so that you can go into work every day and not dread the next morning, so that you feel appreciated and respected, and so that you can give something back to the organization that they feel is of such a value that when you go into work every day, you know that you are a team member that is part of a community that needs you and doesn't just want you. This series is telling you what is happening behind the scenes so that you have the best chance of getting the job that you want. The conversations happening at the leadership table that you wouldn't be exposed to, when you understand conversations that are happening at this level, then you will understand how you get hired and how you get fired. Every conversation at the leadership table is centered around 3 basic premises. Number 1, how do we get the best product market fit solution? Number 2, how do we increase our profitability? And number 3, how do we increase our revenue? Also, how do we do this at the lowest possible cost while still incentivizing people to do what we need them to do? Those 3 premises are at the basis of every conversation at the leadership table. And what spawns from that is your customer engagement, the uniqueness of your business, and all of those other pertinent business decisions. But those 3 criteria are what every business is centered around. And if you are a publicly traded company, it's about how you give shareholder profitability back, and that is that. So if you at any point in time are not helping the company to be able to achieve profitability, revenue, if you are not helping the company to be able to have the best product market fit solution, or if you are not assisting the company in ensuring that you are a high value employee and that you are worth your value and that your worth, your value in most organization means covering your costs, taking a look at your annual salary, then that means that you are working against the company. Every leadership conversation I have ever been a part of at a startup, a mid-sized company, or an enterprise company centers around these premises, and you become a number. I don't care how valuable you think you are to that organization. The second that organization sniffs out a hint of trouble, you are a number, and most of you have likely experienced this. Let's talk about the evaluation process of your interviews. Depending on the organization that you interview with, they may or may not have a hiring process that follows a specific cadence or a hiring process that is off the cuff. So you could be working for an org where they have a very tailored process. There are interviews, 4 or 5, There's a cognitive or behavioral assessment that's done. There could be a panel that takes an assessment of you. There could be some sort of case study or presentation that's part of your interview process. And you will be having conversations with multiple stakeholders. The evaluation process of your interview could follow one of two different paths. There's potentially the path that's very collaborative, and at any point in time, the interviewers are speaking with one another about what they think of you and your candidacy. Or it could follow a blind process, which essentially means that you're going to move from one person to the next person without those individuals collaborating or speaking about how your previous interview went. Before they've had a full assessment of you, and then they're going to sit down and they're going to have a discussion about you as a candidate. So you've got those two paths. Normally, it's the former. You also need to know that at any point in time in the interview process, a company could be holding on to you as a second best candidate while they are seeing other candidates. I've been asked to do this multiple times, and I will give you a perfect example of this. I recently put forward a candidate for a senior leadership role, and this candidate met with HR, they met with the COO, and both individuals love this candidate for specific criteria. But their main challenge with this candidate was that the candidate was a little rough in their presentation. He wasn't as polished as he could be. Now, is this something that's coachable and teachable? Absolutely it is. But guess what? The hiring manager and the HR manager evaluated this individual, and they both came back to me saying, we were aligned in our thinking of this candidate. We want you to hold on him and keep him warm on the bench while you present us with other candidates. If you work directly with the company, your recruiter may not have this information and won't be giving this to you because you don't have a recruiter. But know that this could be happening at any point in time. They want you to keep up your impression of the company. They want you to stay engaged. So they might be throwing some arbitrary reason at you as to why you're not progressing yet. I've had many interviewers lie to candidates and say, well, we're going to have to meet with some other people first this week. We'll get back to you. They full well know they have no one else in the pipeline because they don't want you to think that you're the only one, and they're holding on you. Conversely, I've had hiring managers and interviewers and recruiters saying to candidates, you're the only one. We don't have anyone else in the pipeline. They've got to choose you. And then when it tanks for one of two reasons, either you aren't a fit or you became overconfident and lost sight of what you were doing in the interview process, you're gone and you're wondering what happened. Another challenge, why you won't get hired in one interview, and if you do, you should be concerned. What happens if you go on one interview and the hiring manager says, we want to extend you an offer? You should be very concerned. There is no way that you know what you need to know in one interview. And if you get lucky and this ends up being the most amazing fit for you, you are in the lowest percentile of the job searching interviewing population possible. There is no way in a 60 to 90 minute interview that you know everything you need to know to spend 40 to 60 hours a week of your life at this company. You should be concerned if that hiring manager says immediately, I know all I need to know, and I want you to start, because that means that person also doesn't know enough about you. They don't know enough about your skill set. They don't know enough about your personality. They don't know enough about your competencies, your background, your desires, your fit. They haven't spent enough time with you to be able to understand how you could be successful in this role. They barely have enough time to be able to get through your resume and ask you some behavioral questions, tell you about the company, and then politely even build some rapport with you in 60 to 90 minutes. So how are they making an offer? There is nothing wrong with you saying to an interviewer, thank you so much. I am excited about this opportunity, but there are some questions that I would like to spend time in asking you to make sure that this is the best fit for both of us. Because I plan on being with this company for a long term, and because it's such an important decision for me at this point in time, would you mind sitting down with me for another 60 minutes? That shows that you have a lot of respect for the organization. Now, I get it. Some of you may be out of work and you might be excited to join. I'm just trying to tell you what to do to circumvent a disaster. This also shows a high level of intelligence and that you don't want to get yourself into a situation where you could potentially be making a mistake. It shows that you are taking an active interest in that company and that you care about the outcome for them as well. Now, you might say to me, Jordana, I don't give a shit. This is one of my first jobs, and if it works out, great, and if it doesn't, that's fine too. If that's the path you want to take, that's a risk that you want to take. I'm not supportive of that risk, and I can pretty much guarantee you that you're going to be sitting back in front of me within a short period of time saying it wasn't the right fit. I've had it happen to many different candidates. And then they've ended up saying, I wish I spent some more time asking questions out front. Or I didn't know this about the culture. Or I didn't realize this about the product. Or I didn't know this about the commission plan. And now I find out that it's half of what I thought I was going to get. Or my manager just left within 30 days and they were the reason why I started working here. Let's talk about mental clarity going through the interview from a recruiter's perspective. As a recruiter, I'm thinking about the interview process as my client is explaining it to me. I'm automatically going to start thinking about the types of personalities that the candidate will be meeting with. I'm judging the candidates as well as judging the clients. And I'm going to be thinking about the types of questions that these individuals will be asking the candidates and the desires that they will have coming out of the interview and how each one of these questions is measured in terms of their key performance indicators. Because I know that they are going to be reflecting on the candidate immediately after the interview and they are going to want my feedback. Let me give you an example of this. I recently started working on some district manager roles for a retailer. There will be at least 3 people interviewing the candidate. One will be the HR manager, the other will be the VP of store operations, and the other will be the president of the company. Those 3 personalities couldn't be further from being different. And they are going to have some shared goals? Absolutely they are. They are all going to care about culture fit. They are also all going to care about revenue generation and people management skills, profitability. Those things are going to matter. They're all going to care about the fact that you can coach, mentor, train, advise, guide all of the team members under you. And they're all going to care that you come in with a certain set of skills and competencies. But I can promise you right now that the president is going to care the most that you are coming in to be a change agent and that you are going to be able to support the corporate objectives, which are high-level objectives, making sure that there's market profitability, making sure that you're looking holistically at the organization and your district and not just individual goals and the individual store level. And they want to make sure that the talent is going to be the best talent that they can get in the market. So that's the president. HR, they're going to be measuring you based off the fact that you are someone who can adopt, I would say, a charismatic attitude to make sure that you're not a tactical manager, but that you are a strategic manager. HR also wants to hear the least amount of complaints coming out of your division as humanly possible. They want to make sure that you have the core skills and competencies that they have created in the job description, and those things are going to be things that you are going to adhere to and be measured by. And keep in mind, they want to make sure they get you for the cheapest rate in the market. Then you have your hiring manager, the VP of store operations, who you're going to report into. They want to make sure that you can work independently and autonomously. They want to make sure that within your first 30 days, you're coming in and making a great impression and starting to be that change agent through your onboarding and your training program, meeting with your division and getting your feet wet and actually doing some work. They also want to make sure that you are going to make them look good because they probably have 3 or 4 other district managers. So they have some immediate pain points, and maybe it's churn. Maybe you could be revenue attrition. Maybe it's inventory challenges. You need to come in and talk about how you're going to solve for those. So to think like a recruiter in the interview process, you need to have complete clarity over who you are meeting with. What are those individuals' goals? It is not going to be the same from interview to interview, so you need to adapt. Here's a few other points. The hiring manager can smell desperation. This is also why the law of attraction applies, in that the recruiter doesn't normally reach out to you when you are actively looking for work so much as when you aren't. How many times have I heard a candidate say to me, Jordana, when I was employed, I used to get recruiter messages and emails, phone calls all of the time. People were reaching out to me. They wanted me to do this, do that. They were bringing me all of these different opportunities. And now that I'm out of work, I can't seem to find anything. Well, let's think about that for a second. The hiring manager and recruiters can smell desperation. Let me explain what that actually means to you. Oftentimes, when you are actively employed, you have a confidence about you. You have a clarity about you in terms of what you're good at. You start to speak to people about your achievements and your successes. You are sharing online how well you're doing. It shows up in your social feeds. You could be posting pictures of you at conferences, or you might potentially be commenting on other team members and how well they are doing, promoting them, being happy for them. You are showing up every single day because you are so proud of how well you are doing and how well your team is doing and how well your company is doing. And so that effect is scrolling through your network and you're being seen by multiple people as being this successful person. Well, on the flip side, when you're not doing well or when you are struggling, you start to crawl inwards. You stop sharing as much information, or the information that you are sharing is negative. You're not doing as well, so you feel as though you don't have the achievements and successes to be sharing. You're not necessarily commenting on other people's successes because you're jealous or frustrated, and you feel as though if you're going to comment on their successes, then that means that you're not doing as well. Recruiters and hiring managers are seeing that, and you're not showing up in their feed as much either. So when you go and you sit down at an interview and you are desperate to get that job, not only are you showing that through your body language and through your energy, but it's coming through in the tone of your voice. It's coming through in your answers and how you present yourself to them. Here's an example. Let's go and pretend that I'm meeting with a new client and I haven't had a recruiting mandate in 3 months, no roles. I might sit down and say, no problem to everything. We can do that for you. Absolutely, I'll do it for that price. We can find that person for you. Don't worry about it. We'll get all that done for you. I'll be saying things like that even before they're finished their sentences. I'll be cutting them off because I want to make sure that they know that I can do this because I'm desperate. I want the work. I need the work. I need to get the money. Versus if I have a full roster of work and I go and sit down with a client, I'm going to be listening more actively and engaged and speaking less. And I might be less willing to negotiate with them. I might be a little more blunt with some of my answers or pensive with some of my answers. And when I leave, rather than saying, absolutely no questions asked, I can do anything, maybe I'm negotiating. And maybe I'll say something like, I understand, we're not for everybody if they don't want to negotiate back. If you're happier doing what you're doing now and getting the result, then I suggest you stay with what you're doing. I would never say that if I was desperate for the work. And there's a little throw in from Jeremy Miner's NEPQ. So start thinking in the mindset of the fact that there are an abundant amount of opportunities out there. And I know that sounds like bullshit. I know it's hard to do when you're desperate for work and you want the job. And I know it because I hear it in your DMs. But if you slow your brain down and make sure that your mouth is matching what your brain is thinking, I promise you, you will have a better, impactful hiring process and interview. Because if the next candidate comes in and they act with a degree of confidence and as though they don't need this job and they're happy with where they are, they're engaged with where they are, the hiring manager sees that and they say to themselves something like, well, here's someone who's competent in their skills, in their abilities. Here is someone who's highly engaged. They're not bad-mouthing their employer. They're not blaming everybody else for what's gone wrong. We want this person. Lastly, let me leave you with this thought. You will have a much better chance of getting a job that is similar to what you are doing than getting a level up from what you are doing. And I know when most of you go job searching, your goal is to get a better paying job with a better title. Most people are looking to get something better than what they have. You're not looking to get something similar unless you're potentially leaving a toxic environment. That makes sense. I did the same thing. But I'm here to tell you that you will have a better chance if you work for a large enough company that has the opportunities to get that job internally than to go outside of the market at a similar company. There's some concessions here. You might have to make a concession on pay. You might have to make a concession on the size of company that you're going to or the industry that you want to be going into, or you might need to make a concession on title. Let me explain this in a very realistic example. Oftentimes when I hear from employers, it's, I want someone who's been an account executive that's been in the role for 3 to 5 years. I want them to have been in this industry. I want someone who's done net new business prospecting, but can also do negotiations and manage clients. And I would be happy if you can pull them from the competition. Now, when I say to them, well, you know, if they're already doing this at a competitor, why would they want to come and do this for you? Which I always say, they normally say something like this. Oh, well, we've got this type of great culture and we've got this type of career growth, or we offer this type of uncapped better commission plan. We're undergoing change in our organization and transforming from here to there. Those might be things that are attractive to you as a company. And I highly recommend that you look at them as a candidate if you want to join companies for those reasons. Now, if you're looking to go from an independent contributor to a sales manager, here is where I say as well, it will be far easier to do that at your existing company than to go to an external company. You've probably experienced this if you've also tried to get into a manager role. Most companies are not well equipped to do training, coaching, and development of a new manager, meaning a new hire. If you have the opportunity to be at your current company and get into a leadership role, or at least some sort of mentorship or some sort of supervisory experience, before you go out into the market and start looking for a job to get that sales manager role or that sales director role, I highly recommend that you do what you can internally in your organization. It's because most organizations just don't want to take a risk on a first-time manager or a first-time director. Now, if you don't have the opportunity to do that at your existing company and you truly want to pivot and make a career change, maybe you want to move from marketing into sales, or maybe you're okay with having something that's more of a lateral move, or maybe you know that you're never going to be able to get a raise at your company, you're going to have to go externally, then I certainly encourage you to do so. And there are ways to do this, but you need to invest in auditing yourself and your skill set before you just go out into the market. That's what this entire video is about, auditing you and taking a look at you. Here's another example that I often hear. Let's say I've been selling transportation services for 5 years now, and I want to sell technology services. I want you to think like a hiring manager and think like a recruiter. Why would I want you for that role? What is the risk that I'm taking to hire you into a role like that versus the risk that you're taking? You're using my money to develop a new skill set, so you need to convince me of why I would hire you and not someone from the competition. You don't know the industry, you don't know the key decision makers, and you don't know the technology, but you want me to hire you because you think that knowing how to sell is all that we'll need. And you think that I'm going to be taking this risk on you coming into the industry and doing all your onboarding and all of your training when I could take someone who's already been in this industry. So spend the time to think about you, your value, your pitch, your skill sets. In the community and also in the agenda, I am going to share with you a sample summary document of how I prep a candidate for a job, because I want you to be aware that yes, you can get a job at a better company, a better culture, better pay, better personal growth. I want you to know that these opportunities exist, but I also want you to know that it's not always up to the hiring manager. It's up to you. I'll see you in the next one.